Graffiti, is it art? Isn't it art? Often debated. Well, it takes us to this week's case. And in this week's case, we had a man who in the 1970s bought a building in Brooklyn, New York, Jerry Wolkoff. And Jerry bought the building and he wasn't having any immediate need for it. He thought he'd later develop it. And so it was sitting there, big industrial building. And he was approached by artists in the area. They said, well, can we paint pictures on the side of it? I mean, you're not really using it. And he said, sure, go ahead. Paint pictures on it. So he allowed artists to paint pictures on it. It became a relatively well-known building for artists to be able to put any kind of graffiti on it that they wanted to put on it, and people came from all over to paint on it. Well, time moves on, and Jerry said, you know, now we're to a point where I'm going to develop this area. I'm going to develop it with retail and some apartments and various other things, so we're going to have to demolish part of the building, and we're going to have to get rid of the art. I know these artists are going to have some emotional attachment to the art, and instead of doing this piecemeal, we're just going to get rid of the art. So one night, he had all the art whitewashed out. The next morning, it wasn't there. Needless to say, the artists were not happy at all. They weren't happy at all. And they said, you know, this is really offensive because we had put time, effort, and energy into this thing, and we created this stuff, and now you destroyed it. Well, unbeknownst to some people, there exists in the federal law in the United States the Visual Artists' Rights Act. And the Visual Artists' Rights Act allow an artist to have moral rights in whatever the artist creates. And those rights extend beyond a simple copyright. Copyright is a little different situation. But this act now provides that even though somebody else may purchase the artwork, whether it's a statue, a painting, or something else, if that individual chooses to destroy it or alter it in some way, the artist who created it has the ability to bring claim saying, hey, this violates my original creative intent and I don't want it to be done, and they can actually sue for damages. Okay, now let's return to this case. So Jerry Wolkoff, as a developer, removes all the artwork. Artists are unhappy. They bring claim. Case moves forward to a jury in a federal district court in Brooklyn. There the jury hears this. They are informed as to what the act provides, and they come away and say, they have to say, is this really art or is this simply graffiti? Do the artists have a moral right in the art if it is art, and to what extent should we reimburse them for the loss that they had through the loss of the art itself? And should we, on the other side of the coin, listen to Jerry? And Jerry, through his attorneys, was arguing, listen, nobody ever had any right in the building. I was a good guy. I said they could go over there and paint on the side of the wall. I never gave them any right per se in the building. And I did that basically being a good guy, and there was never any understanding that this was going to be anything other than temporary. It was going to disappear at some point in time. Jury heard the arguments, and the jury came away and they said, we find for the artists. We find for the artists. We find that they created this stuff. They had the right to put it on the side of the building. They created it, and they developed an interest in it, and that interest was protected under the Visual Artists' Rights Act, and that right was violated when Jerry simply whitewashed over everything. And at the end of the day, the jury came away and said, hey, you, Jerry, did destroy that artwork, and you owe the artists $6.7 million. $6.7 million. And that is what the verdict of the jury was. It was confirmed by the judge. Now, whether this case goes up on appeal remains to be seen, but that's where it stands right now, with Jerry having a verdict against him in the amount of $6.7 million. Well, what do we learn from this? What we learn from this is that there are various rights that are actually protected in federal statute, many of which are not fully exercised, but when exercised, do have some real teeth in them. What we've also learned on this is that when you are allowing someone else to utilize your property, and maybe you're just a good guy, you should have a full understanding of what that use will entail and whether that could later result in some unfortunate consequences for you. We bring you this case, as we bring cases every week, so you understand how the law works. I'm David Allen.